know, you guys, I'm just going to go ahead and get straight into it with the New England Patriots at this point, because I really do think this team has had a slept-on offseason overall, and with some of the additions they made, I really do think this team is on track to becoming the team that they once were. They added pieces not only on the offensive side of the ball in extremely important positions, but they also added a bunch of pieces to a defense that I honestly think was already pretty talented, and I think this is going to make this team a lot better overall, and I really do think they have a chance to surprise a lot of people this year. But before I get into why I exactly believe that, with training camp and everything going on in the NFL right now, it's finally starting to get closer and closer to the actual season, and it's got me thinking about all of the great games I'm going to be able to see this year due to the sponsor of this video, SeatGeek. SeatGeek, as most of you probably know, is the most popular and #1 rated ticketing app out of all ticketing apps on the market right now, and it's for a really, really good reason. They offer tickets to pretty much anything you could ever want, and that includes what most people watching this video love, the NFL, and I'm telling you right now, I have gotten so many good deals on SeatGeek, which has allowed me to attend tons of games over the past few years. They show you which tickets are best, and they make it extremely easy for you to find those tickets. And since they're sponsoring this video, you know I had to help you guys out. So if you go down in the description and click the first link, you can download the app, and if you use my code LOGIC, you will get $20 off your first ticket. That's $20 off your first purchase with promo code LOGIC, so make sure to go down and click that link right now to get the app. Okay, so to get back on topic with the New England Patriots, this team, of course, is coming off an absolutely atrocious season, if we're just being completely honest, finishing 4-13 and obviously not making the playoffs. This was obviously not what anyone was hoping for, but to be honest with you, the main reason for this was quarterback play, because neither Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi played very good football, and when you don't have a quarterback that's playing good football, you're going to lose the majority of the games you play in, and that's exactly what we saw happen. So coming into this offseason, pretty much everyone figured if the Patriots had a chance, they would find a way to take a quarterback in the draft. And man, oh man, did they find a way to do that. And do I think they got the right quarterback in the draft for where they were picking? Because I actually think they got a bit of a steal. So the consensus #1 quarterback heading into the draft was easily Caleb Williams, and that really wasn't up for debate. But the #2 quarterback was really up for debate, and no one knew who the second quarterback was going to be off the board. But when you watch both Jayden Daniels and Drake Maye's tape, I think it's pretty clear that Drake Maye is the better player. Jayden Daniels, of course, has the speed and he's electric on the ground, but outside of that, he really doesn't bring much to the table. But Drake Maye, on the other hand, he brings a lot to the table, and that includes his ability to run the ball as well. He's obviously not as good of a runner as Jayden Daniels, but he can run the ball in a similar way to how Justin Herbert can run the ball or Trevor Lawrence can run the ball. He's not going to run the ball all the time or anything, but he can escape the pocket and extend plays at a really, really high level, and that's all you really want your quarterback to do. The more you're running and taking hits, the more often you're going to get injured, so it's not always a good thing to run the ball a ton, and I think Drake Maye has that great middle ground for where you want a quarterback to be. If he has to run, he will, but if he doesn't have to, he's also really good at standing in there in the pocket and going through his progressions and using his extremely strong arm to fit the ball in tight windows. He really does have all the traits you could ever ask for in a quarterback prospect, and in most draft classes, he would have went #1 overall because of that. Now, I know there's been a lot of questions surrounding whether he was going to start the season or if Jacoby Brissett was going to start the season, and in my personal opinion, I would like to see Drake Maye start. For most quarterbacks, especially if they're more game manager-ish, I would like to see them sit for a little while and learn, but I think Drake Maye just getting thrown out there in the fire is good for him because he is going to be able to figure out the best way to make things happen due to all of the traits he has, and I think with the more snaps that he plays, the better he's going to get. I know the Patriots don't have the greatest roster around him right now, but I do think they did a good job in the draft of trying to help that out and trying to make it better, because I really do think they did that, and they did make his life a lot easier than it would have been if they didn't do that. The first thing they did in the draft was go out in the second round and take Jalynn Polk, a receiver out of Washington, to give Drake Maye another option to throw to. Jalynn Polk is a guy that is a really complete wideout that has every trait in the book that you want, and he is going to find ways to get open at all levels of the field, which is exactly what you want for a young quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being the #1 receiver on this team due to how good he was in college, and when you pair with that you also went out in the 4th round round and got another great receiver in Javon Baker out of UCF, things do start to come together a little bit. Javon Baker, in my opinion, even though he was taken in the 4th round, has the upside to be a #1 receiver in the league. And while he might not be a burner and he might not be the fastest guy ever, he plays a lot faster than his 40 times showed, and he is really good at everything else. He's a really good route runner, he has really good hands, and he's a really smart player, and you see that on tape. He knows when to shut a route down, and he knows when to settle into open zones. And when you have a receiver that knows that type of stuff, it's going to make the quarterback's life a lot easier, because not only are they going to get open more often, but the quarterback can also trust them to do their job. I think both Javon Baker and Jalynn Polk are going to start week 1 for the Patriots. And when you combine those two guys with what they already had in Juju Smith-Schuster and Demario Douglas, things really don't look that bad. It's not the greatest weapon room ever, but it's definitely good enough to see what you have in a young quarterback, and it's definitely enough to see some success, and I think that's all the Patriots were going for. Now, on top of that, you also went out in the draft and took Caden Wallace in the 3rd round and Layden Robinson in the 4th round to try to shore up that offensive line a little bit more, to not only offer better pass protection, but to also build out a better running game. A young quarterback needs time to throw, and he also needs a run game to help him out so he doesn't have all the pressure on himself, and I think the addition of those offensive linemen will help do that, and I think the addition of Antonio Gibson will help out with that. Antonio Gibson's a pretty solid running back, especially as a receiving threat, and then to pair with Antonio Gibson, you're still going to have rhamondre Stevenson, who's a guy I'm really high on, and when this guy gets a lot of touches, he finds ways to make things happen, and that's going to make this offense a lot more well-rounded. So while yes, I don't think the Patriots are all the way there yet, I do think they're a lot closer than people give them credit, and I think people are going to see that pretty early on in the season when they watch Drake Maye play. But of course, you don't just need an offense to be a good football team, you also need a good defense, and even though Bill Belichick left, I think this defense is still going to be really good. You, of course, on the defensive line, still have Matthew Judon and Josh Uche at the edge positions, which is a pretty good edge duo with all things considered. You have Christian Barmore, who played extremely well last year, to go along with what you have at the edge positions, and I think that's going to make this defensive line not too bad. And if they do that, everything else on this defense will follow. The linebacker room that I think is pretty decent will follow, and most importantly, this secondary that I still think is absolutely insane is going to follow. And if you doubted anything else on this defense, it wouldn't be the secondary, because they have pieces all over the board. You, of course, most importantly, have Christian Gonzales coming back from his injury, and why I say most importantly is because this guy was absolutely going crazy before he went down with his injury, and I think he's going to get back on that track when he plays this year. Now, to go along with that, you're going to have Jonathan Jones, who's another great corner, and that makes up a really good 1-2 punch that a lot of quarterbacks are not going to want to throw at. Both of these guys are going to be able to lock down the guy in front of them on a pretty consistent basis, so having this already built out on your roster is something you should not overlook. Now, as a third option, you also have Marcus Jones, who's another guy that I like a decent amount, and I think he's a pretty good corner, especially as a nickel guy. And then when you move back to safety, you of course have that guy Jabril Peppers, who is absolutely insane, that played really good for you last year. And then you also have that guy Kyle Duggar, who played really good for you last year as well, which makes up a safety room that I'm also really confident in. And if they can just lock down guys for a specific amount of time, I think it'll give the defensive line a chance to get back to the quarterback, and that's really a defense's entire goal. I think this defense, with all the talent they have right now, combined with the offense and the potential they have, really could be a team that people are saying is going to be one of the worst football teams in all of football coming into the season, but ends up being a pretty solid football team with a lot of promise for the future. And if that happens, you obviously cannot be mad.